There's simply no escaping the fact that wrestling is a largely bizarre universe. And it's one that often contains things that would seem entirely odd if they went down anywhere outside of this predetermined source of entertainment. So, and with a nod to the brilliant folks over on R² Circle who spotted a ton of this weird kayfabe logic, let's take a closer look at the stuff seen going down inside of this wrestling bubble that would leave a non-fan scratching their poor old heads. I'm Gareth, this is What Culture Wrestling, and here are 11 things that only make sense in wrestling and nowhere else. Number 11, got a problem? Wait all week and then talk about it for the first time in the ring. This one may not be quite as silly as it once was thanks to the invention of social media. But you'll still struggle to get through a single week of wrestling television without it popping up. In any other situation outside of wrestling, if another human being upset you with their words or actions, there's a strong chance you wouldn't leave it all that long before responding, right? And even if you did let the dust settle a little before reacting to getting jumped or verbally abused by a real-life rival, you'd probably give it a day or a few max before speaking your mind. Within this strange universe though, waiting a whole week or even longer before making your first comments on a tense situation in front of an arena full of people is the peculiar norm. Just to really drag out that drama, right? Admittedly, stars like Drew McIntyre, The Rock, and many others have opted to take to Twitter/X or Instagram to spit out the odd dig and reply or 20-minute promo here or there, to keep a feud simmering along in the time between shows in more recent times. But more often than not, you'll still find wrestlers waiting a full week to react to getting beaten down or called out by an enemy. Can you imagine being suddenly criticized by a colleague at work, storming out of the building that day, and then waiting a whole 7 days or more to let them know how you feel in front of a room full of staff and or customers? It'd be weird, wouldn't it? Number 10, some wrestlers can spit poison. Wrestling has always been a place overflowing with colourful characters, with some obviously being stranger than others. But while watching a person pretend to be a superhero or vampire wouldn't actually appear to be all that strange to anyone who'd ever visited a Comic-Con, the same cannot be said for those individuals fond of spitting a certain substance at their rivals. Whether it's the more commonly seen green variation, the burning red one, or the blinding black. This poison mist being conjured up from an apparent secret gland within some wrestlers and exploded into the faces of their enemies is an occurrence that only really makes sense inside of the fantasy land that is pro wrestling. Oh, Asuka has temporarily and rather horrifically blinded someone, again on her way to winning a belt, has she? What is she like, eh? Imagine having to worry about a person potentially hitting you with toxic spray if you were standing in the way of them getting a promotion. But that's not the only supernatural wrestling weapon that would be all kinds of weird anywhere else. Number 9, Undertaker could shoot lightning, just not in his matches. When it comes to supernatural figures within the wrestling business, there's simply none more iconic or dumb than the Deadman. A superpowered zombie and occasional biker dude, The Undertaker has shown off the hilariously surreal ability to lift entire rings, survive fiery doom, and even shoot lightning out of his damn fingertips over the years. Outside of a superhero feature though, where else would you ever see a bloke in a cowboy hat unleashing actual electricity from their hands and threatening to take the souls of his colleagues/rivals? Perhaps more bizarre than the actual act itself though, is the fact the Phenom never actually thought to use this rather useful lightning strike during one of his matches. Sure, intimidating Olympic gold medalist with a quick shock is fine, but what was stopping Mean Mark from blasting away his opponents inside of Hell in a Cell? Or another bout contested under no DQ rules? Nothing, that's what. But nobody ever thought to question why he didn't. Number 8, entrance music announcing a run-in. As a recent edition of AEW Dynamite proved, there is such a thing as a good/sensible version of something terrible/dumb. And while the decision to announce that a wrestler is heading down to the ring to help a pal by blasting out their own music is often about as ridiculous as it gets, was actually a clever way of making the heel unit stare at the entrance ramp before surprising them from behind. More often than not though, these arrivals don't really make that much sense. Most folks just head right out from Gorilla and attack the enemy. So why would you want to let a rival know you were coming by blaring out your theme song beforehand? And then you have someone like a Jeff Hardy, who not only opted to foolishly hit play on his music when coming to Matt's aid during his own AEW debut in March 2022, but then also stupidly opted to rock out on the ramp for a bit while his brother was still being battered in the ring. What were you doing, Jeff? The songs are obviously played to trigger the loudest pop possible as a popular wrestler returns/arrives. But watching one of your mates or siblings jump in to help you in a brawl after first taking a second to fire up their chosen theme song on a nearby jukebox would certainly be an odd scenario anywhere else. Now I've got a quick question for you. What is your favorite wrestling theme song of all time? You let me know in the comment section right down below, baby. Number 7. Interference rarely being properly punished. From those times when a wrestler bafflingly tells the world they're on their way down to fight off a villain via music, to the infuriating visual of someone interfering in an actual match, heels choosing to step in and cost a babyface a contest behind a referee's back has become yet another frustrating trope over the years. But the most irritating part of it all is just how easily the antagonists tend to get away with their cheating ways. If someone broke the rules to earn a victory in a game/fight in any other sport, surely all involved would be seriously punished, right? Firstly, there's a decent chance the initial decision would be overturned. Hell, the referee who allowed this madness to go down in the first place would perhaps be fined for their error too. In wrestling though, a heel's teammate jumping in to help them beat an enemy while an official has their back turned is often just accepted and forgotten about a week later, with the likes of Ludwig Kaiser, Jimmy Uso, Solo Sikoa and more regularly costing faces matches and not being given that severe a punishment for their dastardly actions. The threat of an undisclosed fine clearly isn't enough to stop wrestlers from ruining a hero's night time and time again, and that's typically as bad as the penalties get for a consistent cheater in this wrestling world. It's all a bit weird. Number 6. Wrestlers' secret conversations being filmed on camera and beamed all around the world. While there's no denying that the Bloodline saga has been one of the most gripping and successful long-term storylines in wrestling history, it's also a tale that has contained one of the biggest bugs the industry has to offer too. That being the always absurd invisible camera. Time and time again throughout this story of Usos dominating and clashing with Roman Reigns, and the likes of Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes looking to bring down the Tribal Chief's empire, the various wrestlers involved have been captured engaging in some rather secretive conversations backstage. Zayn meeting Jey Uso in secret but with a camera nearby to let him know that there was a way out of the bloodline for him back in 2023 was just one of the many times this hugely illogical device dragged down the drama. Any human in real life with a brain and a pair of eyes would be able to discover these secret chats by flicking on their TV. In the world of WWE in particular, however, it's often just accepted that some of the more private moments in these popular characters' lives play out in front of a camera operator before being beamed all around the planet, and that the majority of the folks involved simply don't bother watching these important parts of the show. They've got better things to do, apparently. But cheers for watching this What Culture show right here, baby, and if you're enjoying what you're watching, then hit that subscribe button down below for more of this What Culture stuff in your day. Number 5. Taking a move in a multiple-person match will knock you out for longer. Regardless of when or where you're super kicked in the face or power slammed in the real world, there's a good chance the amount of time you're out of commission will be largely consistent. When that kind of impact goes down in the middle of a wrestling ring though, the sort of match you're involved in seemingly has an effect on exactly how much these attacks suck. For example, if a star is hit by a person flying over the top rope in a standard singles match, that wrestler will likely be knocked silly for a second or two. However, they'll be back on their feet soon enough. But take that very same maneuver during a multi-person contest, be that ladder, elimination chamber, or another match containing a lot of talent, and for some reason wrestlers act like they've been hit by a human bus, lying around on the ground for minutes on end in the aftermath. Because more people equals more pain? In truth, this is simply a lazy way to give a few of the other performers involved the spotlight in the middle of the squared circle to execute a creative sequence or spot. That's not the only wrestling environment which can suddenly and strangely change the strength of an attack though. Number 4. Signature moves get stronger in elimination/Iron Man matches. Joining things like ladder and Royal Rumble contests as stipulation matches capable of completely altering the way getting hit by another human feels, apparently. Various elimination tag bouts and Iron Man matches have a similar effect on a body, it seems. Just like you probably have your own signature move at work, a flourish of a pencil or particular way you like to sign off an email, wrestlers have their own collection of signature and finishing weapons. But while the former typically aren't enough to get the job done in a standard singles encounter, they miraculously grow in power during the aforementioned battles. Batista's spear wasn't typically strong enough to end an average match. However, if he unleashed one in the midst of a Survivor Series elimination contest, like he did back in 2008 against Mark Henry, you bet your ass the world's strongest man was staying down for the count. And the same strangely applies to Iron Man wars, with folks like Triple H occasionally earning a pinfall point with a spinebuster, despite that move rarely being enough to win him a match in other bouts. Outside of the wrestling bubble, these attacks would obviously have an equal effect on your anatomy. It's these weapons' power levels have an accepted habit of fluctuating depending on the scenario. The things we just let them get away with. Number 3, attempted murder heading into a standard singles match. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that trying to very much murder another human being is a quick way to end up in a prison cell. Not in wrestling though. You see, in wrestling, trying to end your rival's time among the living is often just a part of the process and a basic step on the road to eventually grappling in a plain old singles match. The most memorable example of attempted murder being an accepted part of the build-up to a good old-fashioned wrestling match popped up back when The Rock and Hollywood Hulk Hogan were set to collide at WrestleMania X8. Not long after the former threw down their challenge, the latter and his NWO mates opted to try and end Rocky's life by crashing a truck into the ambulance he was being rushed away in. You know, as you do. And the Great One was then shaking hands with that deadly Hogan just a few weeks later following their Mania singles match. Just forgot nearly being killed, did you, Rock, eh? Triple H breaking into Randy Orton's home and smashing him through a damn window before their anticlimactic WrestleMania 25 singles contest is another infamous example of wrestlers going to rather extreme lengths to punish a rival, only for the attacker to then somehow not be locked behind bars. They just ended up locked in a rest hold with their bitter enemy during their eventual grudge match instead. Wrestling logic is wonderfully dumb. Number 2, some wrestlers spend their whole day in their gear. Can you imagine seeing your favorite sports star walking around the local shops in their full kit? It'd make for a hell of a selfie, but it'd also be one of the strangest. But in wrestling land, performers have been known to strut around in their gear, well, everywhere. Watching a grown man throw himself at another human on a golf course in nothing more than some trunks and boots would be an alarming sight most of the time. However, in wrestling, that was simply Jinder Mahal trying to keep hold of the 24/7 title on Raw a few years back. Nothing strange to see here, folks. There was a time there when John Cena was rarely ever seen not sporting his famous jorts and latest color of Fruity Pebbles shirt outside of a wrestling ring too. Rocking up to a round of golf or a fancy hotel in your chosen sports gear, be that trunks, boots and shorts, or even a pair of boxing gloves, would be enough to leave most folks double taking your average sports person. Whereas in this kayfabe world, no one bats an eyelid at some of these professional athletes deciding to spend their entire day in their ready-to-wrestle clothing. Hey, if you're always ready, you never have to get ready. Number 1, hoodies are the ultimate disguise. Anyone who has ever wandered around a stadium or arena in real life will know that security is understandably incredibly tight, and the security teams tasked with ensuring whichever act is performing within that venue that night are kept safe from harm typically do a superb job of protecting the stars doing their thing in front of a live audience. All of that skill seemingly goes out the window whenever the wrestling comes to town though, with something as simple as a hoodie being enough to evade an entire army of guards at times. Find yourself being ejected from ringside mid-match? No bother, just pop on a jumper, throw up that hood, and you'll be able to wander back through the crowd and onto the apron in no time. Just ask Solo Sikoa, who did exactly that at WrestleMania 39. Jimmy Uso is also fond of using that item of clothing to slip under the radar inside of these supposedly super secure buildings, managing to do this during his brother Jay's Intercontinental Championship match with Gunther in February too. A person sneaking through the audience with their hood up would be the sort of suspicious move that would likely draw the attention of security in most situations. But in WWE in particular, these garments seemingly make you completely invisible for a spell, which is probably why the Bloodline continue to rely on them. Have you enjoyed this things that only make sense in wrestling and nowhere else list? Then check out this 10 awesome ideas WWE suddenly stopped doing one too. Let me just tell you, it is just as awesome. Bye bye!